Paula and the rice pudding. We would go to your house every weekend. There were always too many people, and I've always liked to be alone. You had this bucket of lollipops, and you'd let me take as many as I wanted. They'd cut my tongue and make it bleed, but it was worth it. I always took more than one. Then I'd go bounce the basketball in the driveway. I'd walk in circles bouncing that ball, watching it go up and down and up and down, unbothered for hours. It was a meditation that I looked forward to. When I close my eyes, all my memories of you look like summertime. There's an amber hue. It feels warm. But it was winter with the rice pudding, because I remember the adults were discussing El Niño. I learned that it meant the boy. And you all tried to explain how the ocean could bless us with such a warm winter evening like the one that we were enjoying. We were on the balcony and you were all smoking cigarettes. The adults would always play cards around the kitchen table. They'd eat pickled onions and smoked oysters and crackers and olives and other strange things, to my disgust. But I'd usually avoid the kitchen altogether. I loved to hide away in that closet downstairs where you kept your Reader's Digests and National Geographic magazines. You had hundreds, if not thousands, mountains of them. I would sit atop the piles and read for hours. It was the perfect amount of aloneness for me. I could hear your muffled voices and laughter through the ceiling, but I'd be left for hours. Sometimes I would nap. I would make a bed out of the magazines. I would cover myself in them. I loved the way the pages smelled, and the pictures of the jungles and the animals and the deep sea. They all came alive in that closet. I'd fall asleep hoping to visit one of the worlds I'd read about, and I often did. And there was Katie, the dog, with the ears so soft. She and I went everywhere together. She would sit outside the door. But once in a blue moon, like that warm winter night, I would have to remain on duty. Instead of lofting in my escape room, I would stay in the kitchen. Usually it was because I was feeling anxious or uneasy. Sometimes turbulence at home would be carried over to your place and then mixed with alcohol, often a little too much of it. And it was my duty to make sure it did not spill out onto the table. I had to keep the peace, watch like a hawk to catch a shift in tone or a fumbled word. I had to be there, just in case. It was one of those nights. My stomach was in knots and I could sense the tension at the table as the cards were played. Smoked, canned seafood, pickled things, cigarette smoke, beer, rum, vodka, the yellow kitchen light. It was late. Hands were moving slower. Eyes were getting lower. And you jumped up and announced that you were going to make rice pudding for everyone. It must have been well past midnight, and this wasn't an instant packet situation. No. You, merry, motivated, and terribly tipsy, felt called to make us all rice pudding from scratch. So you did. Creamy, calming vanilla, warm cinnamon, wafted as you rocked back and forth beside that giant pot. I waited, nose on the pudding, eyes on the cards. And when it was finally cooled enough for me to eat, I remember thinking, it must be the most wonderful thing I'd ever tasted. And nothing else mattered. I wish I'd told you how that pudding had enrobed my soul, or that it still remains stuck to it to this day. The novelty of it all was an ingredient that could only ever exist there and then, just that one time. Even if I could, I wouldn't bother ask for a recipe. It would never be the same. It was more than just the ingredients. That warm winter night, and that soothing scent bubbling up to overtake the ones of vodka and oysters, stale cigarette smoke. The calm it brought to my soul was something that could never be fully explained or recreated. When I heard you were sick, that memory of the rice pudding came bubbling back up, along with every other time you were there to soothe me with snacks. You did this thing with rolled up cheese and like deli meat. I remember you'd give it to me in bed. Anyways, I hope wherever you are, you're wrapped in so much peace, the same way you always wrapped it around me.